I raised my granddaughter alone. She threw me out after inheriting $25 million, then regretted it. They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned the hard way that money is thicker than both. I'm standing in my hardware store at 6 in the morning, same as I have for the past 32 years, watching the sun creep through the dusty windows. The familiar smell of wood polish and metal fills my nostrils, but today it can't chase away the hollow ache in my chest. 3 months ago, I thought I was the luckiest grandfather alive. Today, I'm wondering if love was ever enough. My name is Henry Morrison, and I raised my granddaughter Emma from the time she was 4 years old until she turned 23. 19 years of my life poured into that little girl like water into thirsty soil. Now she's gone, and I'm left here wondering where it all went wrong. It started with a phone call that shattered my world. My daughter Sarah, barely 26, had been killed in a car accident on a rainy Tuesday in October. The drunk driver walked away without a scratch. Sarah didn't. The worst part? Emma had been in the back seat, scared and crying, calling for her mommy who couldn't answer anymore. Emma's father, Jake, had been out of the picture since she was 2. The moment things got real, diapers, sleepless nights, responsibility, he vanished like smoke. Sarah had tried to track him down after the accident, but by then he was long gone, probably halfway across the country chasing some get-rich-quick scheme. So there I was, a 51-year-old widower who'd lost his wife to cancer just 3 years earlier, suddenly becoming a father all over again. I'll never forget walking into that hospital room and seeing Emma's big brown eyes, Sarah's eyes, staring up at me with a mixture of confusion and hope. "Grandpa Henry," she whispered. "Where's Mommy?" I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth right then. Instead, I scooped her up in my arms and made a promise that would define the next 2 decades of my life. "Don't you worry, sweetheart. Grandpa's here, and I'm never leaving you." The early years were brutal. I knew nothing about raising a little girl. I burned more meals than I cooked, bought the wrong size clothes, and had no clue how to braid hair or deal with skinned knees and broken hearts. But Emma was patient with me, in that way children are when they sense you're trying your best. My hardware store, Morrison's Tools and Supplies, became our second home. While other kids were at daycare, Emma was in the back office, coloring on old invoice papers or helping me organize screws and nails. She knew the difference between a Phillips head and a flathead screwdriver before she could tie her shoes. "This is our kingdom, Em," I used to tell her, gesturing around the cluttered aisles. "Built it with my own 2 hands after your grandma passed. Every board, every shelf, every can of paint, it all means something." She'd nod seriously, like she understood the weight of what I was saying. Back then, she did. I worked 16-hour days to keep us afloat. Mornings at the store, afternoons rushing to pick her up from school, evenings helping with homework while balancing the books. Weekends were for Little League games I coached, birthday parties I planned, and dance recitals I never missed, even if I was the only grandfather in a sea of mothers. The sacrifices added up. I never remarried, though I had opportunities. Marge Thompson from the diner asked me out more times than I could count, and she made a mean apple pie. But I couldn't risk bringing someone into Emma's life who might leave again. She'd already lost too much. I drove the same beat-up Ford truck for 12 years because every spare dollar went into Emma's future. Piano lessons, summer camp, SAT prep courses, college applications. I made sure she had every opportunity one never did. When she got accepted to State University with a partial scholarship, I covered the rest by taking out a second mortgage on the store. "You don't have to do this, Grandpa," she said on move-in day, tears in her eyes as she looked at my calloused hands loading her dorm room with everything she needed. "Yes, I do," I told her, pulling her into a hug that lasted maybe a minute too long. "You're going to do something important with your life, Em. Something that matters. And when you're successful and happy, all of this will have been worth it." She graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration. I was so proud I cried right there in that auditorium, not caring who saw. Emma found a good entry-level job at a marketing firm downtown, and for a brief moment, everything felt perfect. She was living in a small apartment nearby, visiting the store every Sunday for our traditional pancake breakfast. I thought I'd done something right. I thought our bond was unbreakable. I had no idea that a phone call from a lawyer in Chicago would change everything, turning the sweet girl I'd raised into someone I barely recognized. The call came on a Thursday morning in March, just as I was opening the store. Emma's voice was shaky, confused. "Grandpa, there's a lawyer here from Chicago. He says Uncle Richard died and left me something in his will." Richard. My older brother who I hadn't spoken to in 15 years, not since the bitter fight over our parents' estate. He'd taken his share and disappeared into the world of high finance, making millions while I stayed behind to run the family hardware store our father had started. The last I'd heard, Richard was some hotshot investment banker living in a penthouse, married to his third wife, with no children of his own. "What kind of something?" I asked, though I figured it might be a few $1,000s or maybe some stocks. 20 minutes later, Emma burst through my store's front door, her face pale as paper and her hands trembling as she clutched a thick legal document. "Grandpa," she whispered, "he left me $25 million. I nearly dropped the wrench I was holding. "What did you say?" $25 million. The lawyer said Uncle Richard had been following my life from a distance. He knew about college, about my job, about how you raised me. He said. She paused, tears streaming down her cheeks. He said he was trying to make up for abandoning our family. My first emotion wasn't shock or disbelief, it was relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. Emma would never have to worry about money again. She could pay off her student loans, buy a house, start a family without the financial struggles that had defined my entire adult life. Maybe she could even help me modernize the store, turn it into something bigger. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into my arms. "This is wonderful. You'll never have to struggle like I did." But looking back, I should have seen the warning signs in her eyes even then, not gratitude, but something hungrier. Something that made me uneasy. The changes started small. Emma quit her job the following Monday, claiming she needed time to process this opportunity. She hired a financial advisor, then a lawyer, then a whole team of people I'd never heard of. Within a week, she traded her modest Honda Civic for a gleaming BMW that cost more than I made in a year. "It's practical, Grandpa," she explained when I raised an eyebrow. "I need reliable transportation for all my meetings." The meetings multiplied. Suddenly Emma was too busy for our Sunday pancake breakfasts, too occupied with wealth management strategies, to stop by the store. When she did visit, she seemed different, distant, like she was seeing our old life through new eyes. "You know, Grandpa," she said one afternoon, standing in my store wearing a designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Maybe it's time you thought about retiring. You've worked so hard for so long." "Retire?" I laughed. I'm only 67. I've got plenty of good years left in me." She looked around the store with an expression I'd never seen before, embarrassment. Like she was ashamed of the place that had been our sanctuary, our kingdom. "It's just, this place is so outdated. The customers are mostly old contractors and weekend warriors. There's no real growth potential." Her words stung, but I tried to brush it off. "This store put food on our table and paid for your education. It's honest work." "I'm not saying it's not honest," she said quickly, but her tone suggested otherwise. "I'm just saying you deserve better. We both do." The final blow came when she brought her new friends around. 3 young professionals in expensive suits, all talking about investment portfolios and luxury vacations. They looked at my store like it was a museum exhibit, something quaint and outdated. "Emma's told us so much about this place," one of them said with a condescending smile. "How charming. Very authentic." I watched Emma's face turn red. She couldn't meet my eyes. "Grandpa, maybe we should go grab lunch," she said hurriedly, clearly wanting to get her friends away from what she now saw as her embarrassing past. That night, I called her apartment. "We need to talk. You're changing, and not in a good way." "I'm not changing, Grandpa. I'm growing." I'm becoming the person I was meant to be. The person you were meant to be? I felt my voice rising. You were meant to be kind and grateful and humble. You were meant to remember where you came from. Where I came from? She snapped, and for the first time in 19 years, I heard real anger in her voice toward me. Where I came from was poverty, Grandpa. Hand-me-down clothes and generic cereal and worry about every dollar. I don't want to go back to that. We were never poor, Emma. We had everything we needed. No, she said coldly. We had everything you thought we needed. There's a difference. The line went dead, and I stood there in my empty house, holding the phone and wondering when exactly I'd lost my granddaughter to $25 million. The confrontation I'd been dreading came 6 weeks later, on a cold April evening. Emma showed up at my house, the same modest 2-bedroom ranch where I'd raised her, with her lawyer in tow. A sharp-dressed man named Bradley Hutchins who looked at me like I was something unpleasant he'd scraped off his shoe. Grandpa, we need to discuss your future, Emma announced, settling into the living room chair where she used to curl up reading Nancy Drew mysteries. Now she sat stiff-backed and formal, like we were strangers conducting business. My future seems fine to me, I said carefully. Store's doing well, I'm healthy, got everything I need. Bradley cleared his throat. Mr. Morrison, Emma has some concerns about your financial situation. My financial situation? I almost laughed. Son, I'd been taking care of myself since before you were born. Emma leaned forward, and I caught a glimpse of the little girl I'd raised, the one who used to worry about everything. Grandpa, you're living paycheck to paycheck. This house needs repairs you can't afford. The store barely breaks even most months. I have the means to help you now. I never asked for help. That's the problem. Bradley interjected smoothly. Emma feels you're too proud to accept assistance, and it's creating an unhealthy dynamic. I stared at him. Unhealthy dynamic? I raised this girl from the time she was 4 years old. I think our dynamic is just fine. Emma's face hardened. Is it? Because lately it feels like you resent my success. Success? The word exploded out of me. Emma, you inherited that money. You didn't earn it. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Bradley scribbled something in his legal pad, and Emma's eyes flashed with an anger I'd never seen before. I should have known, she said quietly. Meredith warned me this would happen. Who's Meredith? My wealth counselor. She specializes in helping people navigate family dynamics when they come into money. She said you tried to diminish my inheritance to make yourself feel better. I felt like I'd been slapped. Diminish? Emma, I was happy for you. I've never asked you for a penny. Not directly, Bradley said, consulting his notes. But there's been subtle pressure. Guilt trips about the store, comments about your financial struggles, attempts to make Emma feel obligated. That's not... I stopped, replaying our recent conversations. Had I mentioned the store's slow season? Yes. Had I talked about needing to fix the roof? Maybe. But not to guilt her, just normal conversation between family. You don't see it, do you? Emma stood up, pacing to the window where she used to watch for the school bus. Every time we talk, it's about how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed, how the store is your legacy. You're trying to make me feel guilty for having money. I'm proud of the life I built for us. Is that a crime? It is when you use it to manipulate me. The word hit like a physical blow. Manipulate? Emma, everything I did was for you. Was it? Or was it so you could hold it over my head forever? I sank into my recliner, the one I'd bought secondhand when Emma started high school. I don't understand what's happening here. Bradley cleared his throat again. Mr. Morrison, Emma has made a generous offer. She'll give you $2 million if you sell the store and retire. You can buy a nice condo in Florida, enjoy your golden years. I don't want to retire. The store is my life. Emma whirled around. Your life? What about my life? Do you have any idea how embarrassing it is when my friends ask what my family does and I have to say my grandfather runs a tiny hardware store in a strip mall? The words hung in the air like poison gas. This wasn't my Emma talking. This was someone else wearing her face. "Get out," I said quietly. "Grandpa, get out." I stood up, my whole body shaking. "Both of you. Right now." Emma's composure finally cracked. "Fine. But I'm not done with this conversation." They left, and I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, Emma returned with Bradley and a sheriff's deputy. She'd had the house deed researched and discovered what I tried to hide. When she was 16 and needed emergency surgery, I'd put the house in her name as collateral for a medical loan. I'd been making the payments ever since, but legally she owned it. "I'm sorry, Grandpa," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But you're toxic for my mental health. Meredith says I need to establish boundaries. This is my home. It's my house. I'm giving you a week to find somewhere else to live." I looked at the girl I'd raised, the one I'd loved more than my own life, and saw a stranger. "Emma, please. You're all I have left. And that's exactly the problem," she whispered. "I can't be responsible for your happiness anymore. It's too much pressure." A week later, I loaded my pickup truck with 2 suitcases and a box of photographs. As I drove away from the only home Emma had ever known, I caught her watching from the window, her face streaked with tears. Neither of us waved goodbye. I rented a small apartment above Rosie's Diner on Main Street, 6 blocks from my store. The walls were thin, the heat barely worked, and I could hear every conversation from the restaurant below. But it was mine, paid for with my own money, and nobody could throw me out. For the first time in months, I could breathe. The store became my refuge. I threw myself into work with an intensity one hadn't felt in years, staying open late, taking on repair jobs I'd previously turned away. My customers noticed something different about me, a quiet determination, maybe, or the freedom that comes from having nothing left to lose. "You seem lighter somehow, Henry," said Mrs. Patterson, one of my regulars who'd been buying paint and supplies from me for 20 years. "Like you're not carrying the world on your shoulders anymore." I didn't tell her that the world I'd been carrying had kicked me to the curb. Emma, meanwhile, became the town's favorite topic of conversation. In a place like Millfield, where the biggest news was usually the high school football team's latest game, a 23-year-old multimillionaire was impossible to ignore. And Emma seemed determined to make herself as visible as possible. She bought the old Hartwell mansion on the hill, a gaudy Victorian monstrosity that had been empty for years. The renovations alone cost more than most people's homes. I heard the gossip at the diner: Italian marble floors, a wine cellar, a home theater, an infinity pool that required blasting through solid rock. "She's got more money than sense," grumbled Joe Martinez, who ran the competing hardware store across town. "Spending $50,000 on bathroom fixtures when people around here are choosing between groceries and medicine." I wanted to defend her, but the words wouldn't come. The party started in July. Every weekend, exotic cars would wind up the hill to Emma's mansion: Ferraris, Lamborghinis, vehicles that cost more than most people made in 5 years. The music would thump until dawn, and Monday mornings would find the local police dealing with noise complaints and the occasional arrest for drunk driving or drug possession. "Your granddaughter's friends sure know how to have fun," Officer Danny Walsh mentioned when he stopped by for his usual Saturday morning coffee and donut. Danny had been 3 years ahead of Emma in school, remembered her as a quiet, studious girl who helped tutor struggling kids. "They're not her friends," I said quietly. "They're vultures." And I was right. Through the town grapevine, I learned about Emma's business ventures. A nightclub in the city that folded after 6 months. A cryptocurrency startup run by a smooth-talking kid from California who vanished with $500,000. An organic food company that never produced a single product before the investors, Emma chief among them, realized they'd been scammed. "She's got advisors crawling all over that place," reported Marge Thompson, whose nephew worked for the landscaping company maintaining Emma's grounds. "Financial planners, business consultants, life coaches. Each one of them charging her a fortune for advice that'd make your head spin." The worst part was watching her old friends drift away. Sarah Collins, Emma's best friend since elementary school, tried to maintain the friendship for a while. But how do you relate to someone who casually drops $1,000 on a handbag when you're working 2 jobs to afford rent? She invited me to some charity gala in the city, Sarah confided when she stopped by the store to pick up supplies for her apartment. The ticket price was more than I make in a month. When I explained I couldn't afford it, she offered to pay for me, like I was some charity case. I told her thanks, but no thanks. Emma's transformation was complete. The humble girl who used to count pennies for candy at Miller's corner store was now posting photos on social media from private jets and 5-star restaurants. The granddaughter who once helped me inventory screws and washers was dining with senators and movie stars, or at least people who claimed to be. By Christmas, the rumors were getting darker. Tax troubles. Lawsuits from failed business partners. A bitter dispute with Bradley Hutchins, her lawyer, over unpaid fees. The mansion staff had been cut in half, and several local contractors were complaining about unpaid bills. I could have felt vindicated. Could have enjoyed watching karma work its slow justice. Instead, I felt hollow. This wasn't the ending I'd wanted for the little girl who used to fall asleep in my arms while I read her bedtime stories. But I'd learned something important during those lonely months in my apartment above the diner. I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for. The store was actually doing better than ever, partly because I was pouring all my energy into it, but also because word was spreading about my work ethic and reliability. "You know what I respect about you, Henry?" asked Tom Bradley, a contractor who'd become one of my biggest customers. "You're the same man whether you're flush with cash or down to your last dollar. That kind of integrity is rare these days." As I watched Emma's empire crumble from a distance, I realized something else. I'd built something real with my hands and heart, something that couldn't be inherited or bought or stolen. And that was going to matter more than either of us knew. The knock came at my apartment door on a Tuesday night in February, almost a year after Emma had thrown me out. I was eating a microwave dinner and watching the evening news when I heard the hesitant tap-tap-tap that I somehow knew was hers. I opened the door to find my granddaughter standing in the hallway, and for a moment I didn't recognize her. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. She wore an old coat I remembered from her college days, and her face was gaunt, older somehow, with dark circles under eyes that had lost their sparkle. "Hi, Grandpa," she whispered. I should have slammed the door. Should have told her to experience the same rejection she'd given me. Instead, I stepped aside and let her in. She looked around my small apartment, really looked at it, taking in the second-hand furniture, the single plate on the counter, the photograph of her at age 12 that I'd never been able to put away. "God, what have I done?" she murmured, sinking into my threadbare couch. I poured her a cup of coffee and waited. I'd learned patience in my year of solitude. "I'm broke, Grandpa. Worse than broke. The IRS is seizing my assets for back taxes. Apparently, none of my advisors bothered to mention that cryptocurrency gains need to be reported. I owe them $4 million I don't have." She wrapped her hands around the mug like it was a lifeline. "There are lawsuits too. The investors from the nightclub are claiming fraud. My business partners from the organic food company say I was negligent. Everyone who lost money wants to blame someone, and I'm the easiest target." "What about the house?" I asked. "Gone. Had to sell it for half what I paid, and even that's not enough to cover my debts. My former lawyers, dropped me when I couldn't pay their retainer fees." I felt no satisfaction hearing this, only a deep sadness for the path she'd chosen. "All those people who said they were my friends," Emma continued, her voice breaking. "They vanished the moment my credit cards got declined. Bradley Hutchins actually laughed when I called asking for help. Said I was a cautionary tale he'd be telling other clients for years." She looked up at me with those same brown eyes that had captured my heart 20 years ago in a hospital room. "I know I don't deserve to ask, but could you lend me some money? Just enough to get me through this mess? I'll pay you back somehow, I swear." I studied her face, seeing traces of the little girl who used to promise to pay me back for ice cream with hugs and kisses. "Emma," I said gently, "I run a hardware store. Where do you think I'd get the kind of money you need?" Her face fell. "I know it's a long shot, but maybe you could mortgage the store? Or take out a business loan. I'm desperate, Grandpa." I almost smiled at the irony. "Honey, there's something you need to know about that little embarrassing store of mine." "What do you mean?" "Come with me tomorrow morning. There's something I want to show you." The next day, I picked her up in my truck, the same beat-up Ford she'd always been ashamed of, and drove not to my original store, but to the outskirts of town where a large complex of buildings bore the sign, Morrison's Supply Company. Emma stared through the windshield in confusion. "What is this place?" "This is what happened to your grandfather's embarrassing little hardware store." I led her through the main warehouse, where forklifts moved pallets of supplies and dozens of employees processed orders. The loading docks bustled with delivery trucks from 3 states. In the office building, a team of sales representatives worked phones and computers, coordinating shipments to construction companies, municipalities, and contractors throughout the region. "I don't understand," Emma said, watching a forklift load a truck with industrial equipment. "After you left, I had some thinking to do. About what I'd built, and where it could go. Turns out all those relationships I'd developed over 30 years, with contractors, suppliers, other small business owners, they were worth something. A lot, actually." I showed her the books. Morrison's Supply Company was now a $3 million a year operation, growing steadily. Not flashy money, but solid, sustainable profit built on trust and reputation. The original store downtown is still there. I explained. "It's my flagship location. But I've got 6 locations now, and we're opening 2 more next year. We supply everything from nails to excavators to construction crews across 3 states. Emma sank into a chair in my office, staring at the financial statements. $3 million a year? You're making $3 million a year? Revenue, not profit. But yes, it's been good. Real good. But how? When? I thought. You thought I was just a stubborn old man clinging to a failing business. I sat across from her. Emma, this company is worth more than your uncle ever left you. And unlike an inheritance, it didn't just fall into my lap. I built it, one relationship at a time. She was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. I threw it all away, didn't I? $25 million, and I threw it all away. No, honey, I said quietly. You threw away something worth much more than money. 3 months have passed since that morning I showed Emma through Morrison's Supply Company. She's still in town, living in a small apartment above the old bakery, working part-time at Miller's Corner Store, the same place where she used to count pennies for candy as a child. She's asked to meet several times. I've declined politely but firmly. Henry, maybe you should hear her out. Marge Thompson suggested last week when she stopped by the main store. Girl looks like she's learned her lesson. Maybe she has. But some lessons cost more than money. They cost trust, and trust, once broken, doesn't heal just because someone says they're sorry. I don't hate Emma. I never could. But I won't pretend that a few tears and some hard times erase what she chose when she had everything to lose. She didn't just throw me out of a house. She threw away the values I'd spent 19 years teaching her. She chose strangers with dollar signs in their eyes over the man who'd sacrificed everything for her future. That choice tells me who she really is when the stakes are high. The irony isn't lost on me. While Emma was burning through her inheritance on parties and failed ventures, I was building something that would outlast us both. Morrison Supply Company now employs 43 people, all of them earning honest livings, supporting families, contributing to their communities. We sponsor the local Little League, donate supplies to Habitat for Humanity, and give high school graduates their first real jobs. You've got something special here, Mr. Morrison, said Jenny Walsh, Danny's daughter, on her first day as my new inventory coordinator. Fresh out of college with a business degree, she reminds me of Emma at that age, eager, smart, hungry to prove herself. The difference is Jenny appreciates what she's learning instead of being ashamed of it. That's what Emma never understood. This wasn't just a business, it was a legacy built on relationships, reputation, and respect. Every customer who calls me by name, every supplier who trusts my word, every employee who takes pride in their work, they're all part of something bigger than profit margins. Last Tuesday, the Millfield Chamber of Commerce named me Business Owner of the Year. As I stood at that podium looking out at faces I'd known for decades, contractors who'd grown their companies using my supplies, neighbors who'd trusted my advice on home repairs, young people I'd given their first jobs, I realized something profound. I was surrounded by my real family. Emma watched the ceremony from the back of the room. I saw her slip in just as the presentation started and leave before the applause died down. She looked older, smaller somehow, like someone carrying the weight of understanding what she'd lost. After the ceremony, Tom Bradley approached me at the reception. "Henry, I've got to ask, are you planning to pass the business on to anyone? My son Kevin's been talking about getting into the supply business, and I'd love for him to learn from someone like you." The question I'd been avoiding for months. Emma was my only family, my natural heir. But inheritance isn't just about blood, it's about values, character, and the ability to honor what came before while building something better. "I'm thinking about it, Tom," I said honestly. "When the time comes, I want to make sure it goes to someone who'll treat it with respect. Someone who understands that true wealth isn't what you inherit, it's what you build with your own hands and heart." Yesterday morning, I found a letter slipped under my store's front door. Emma's handwriting, careful and precise like I'd taught her when she was 8 years old. "Grandpa, I know you don't want to see me, and I understand why. I destroyed the most important thing in my life for money that was never really mine to begin with. You raised me to be better than that, and I failed you. I failed myself. I'm not asking for forgiveness or another chance. I just want you to know that every day I work at Miller's Corner Store, every time I count change and sweep floors and do the honest work you tried to teach me to value, I think about what you built. Not just the business, but the man you are. The man you tried to help me become. I hope someday I can look in the mirror and see a little bit of Henry Morrison looking back. That would be worth more than all of Uncle Richard's money. I love you, even though I lost the right to say it. Emma." I folded the letter and put it in my wallet, next to the photo of 4-year-old Emma in her first day of school dress. Love doesn't die just because someone disappoints you. But love also doesn't mean pretending that choices don't have consequences. Tonight, I'm sitting in my office above the main warehouse, watching the sun set over a business built on 35 years of honest work. Tomorrow, Jenny Walsh will arrive early, eager to learn. Tom Bradley's son Kevin is coming by next week to discuss a possible internship. The community I've served is thriving, and I'm part of something that matters. I built something with my hands and heart, something real, something lasting. That's a legacy no inheritance can ever buy, and no betrayal can ever destroy. It's enough.